most of my television experience has been on primetime shows. And primetime is now having a huge resurgence and prominence due mainly to the streaming revolution. While primetime television used to be strictly the domain of the Fox network, now that Apple and Hulu and Netflix and Amazon are getting into the animation business, they're all choosing primetime animation programming to be part of their setup. And a lot of that has to do with the simple financial reason that kids can't buy subscriptions to online streaming. And so a lot of these new streaming services aren't doing a lot of kids program anymore, but instead primetime, adult-oriented animation. And so while that is growing exponentially, what I see is that we need a lot of new talent and getting talent up to speed, people who have been working in children's, who may need to know some of the rules that go into primetime TV animation. So let me just start off by saying that story is the hardest discipline within television animation. It has the most expectations because everything flows from that initial storyboard. The design, the pacing, the editing, acting, everything has to be in those storyboards. And so it is up to us, starting with the blank page, to put everything together for the final product. And a lot of that stems from the fact that when in the process, what we are doing is pre-production. The storyboard is pre-production, and when it goes to production, whether it be an overseas or simply remote studio, either in Canada, Atlanta, or anywhere else, they're not necessarily going to add anything other than what we've just put into the storyboard. Here, for example, is a panel from American Dad where Stan was learning how to do basketball. And here's the finished frame. So you can see that what I've drawn gets interpreted exactly the final product. So it's very important for storyboard artists to understand so much about posing, angles, everything, drawing, everything to get this final product. Here is an example of from the show I directed, Paradise PD on Netflix, where the castle at Disneyland turns into a giant spider. This is how I chose to interpret that sentence. And you can see how in the final frame, the design, they may change it and add a little bit, but really whatever you've drawn ends up being what gets through to the final. And so it's very important that what you're drawing in your storyboard, that you know so much about what's going on so that your drawing gets interpreted exactly the way everyone needs it to by the end. And so when you submit a portfolio for a storyboarding job, we are looking at your portfolio not just for what you can do, but we're also checking it for things that you may have forgotten. Because if you forgot to add a certain pose or a certain setup, 5 months later when that comes back from overseas in color, it can be glaringly obvious that it's missing now. So we are looking for the things that you have done and making sure that you haven't forgotten anything. And so I'm going to go over a lot of what we're looking for so that when you start reconstituting or remaking your portfolio, you'll have one that really speaks to the type of things that we need to see. And that is because the Hollywood production system is like a train barreling downhill with no brakes. It is moves fast, schedules are short, everybody needs everything all at once. And by the time a production starts in week 1, they are already 2 weeks behind. And so because this is how every production seems to work in Hollywood, they're really unfortunately isn't time to train new people to do exactly what we need from a production. So when we're looking at portfolios, we're looking to see if you already have a clear understanding of all the basics, because there simply isn't time to train someone. And so what I want to do with these series of classes is give everybody an understanding of what those basics are. So as you prepare your portfolio, you can show that you do understand all the fine points of storyboarding and can therefore are ready to be hired. Because as a director, I will have time to adjust someone to our particular style, because the style that's done in The Simpsons is slightly different than what's done in Bob's Burgers or in other shows. And so adapting someone to a specific style is something that we are ready to do. But it only works if they have such a clear understanding of the storyboard process that we don't have to spend our time working on the basics, but instead on the particulars of the show. So storyboarding in general breaks down into features and television, and they're both exclusive and different into what the expectations are. Television also breaks down into three. We have primetime shows, the premise shows, which are mostly kid shows, and action shows. And premise, primetime, and action each have a different focus. Today, and I could spend a full class talking about each of those. Today, we're going to focus on primetime because it has gotten so popular, and there's just a lot of job openings right now doing so many of these shows. So what is it that makes primetime particular? Primetime is all about staging for the written jokes. In primetime, the writer is king, and the writer gets to decide all of the jokes, and we are there as a vehicle for delivering the jokes in a manner that heightens everything that the writer has written. So all about staging for jokes. So what I'm going to talk about to begin with is staging first, and then joke telling. And if you can staging and the joke telling right, then you're going to be much more useful for primetime shows. So the number one thing to understand is that the entire premise here is to enhance the verbal through the visual. You will get the verbal through the script, and then our job is to enhance everything that was written with a visual aspect. And what that means, like I said, staging. First of all, the staging in primetime sitcoms is very much like what is used in live action sitcoms. Generally speaking, characters are all three-quarter front, facing camera, facing a fourth wall that's never seen, which is where the cameras are. And much like the characters are lined up on the couch in Big Bang Theory, you will often see the very similar thing in the primetime sitcoms. The reason for this is because we are trying to emulate the live action sitcoms. And a live action sitcom set, as you can see, is very shallow due to the limitations of the size of the soundstage and how much room is taken up with a live audience. It is designed so that all the characters will be facing out toward the audience where they are standing or sitting. The audience will sit out front. And so we want to mimic that in our staging and setups. While there are two systems for shooting television. One is the single camera and one is the three camera system. Most sitcom in a three camera system, as you can see, we have a camera, and a camera all facing towards the characters as they do their acting. This system was originally developed for the show I Love Lucy. It was the first time that three cameras were all shooting simultaneously at a full shot, medium shot, and close-up, and then the show would be edited together later. And so as we create our shows, we are duplicating this specific setup. Here is the cast of Paradise PD, the first thing to realize is that the horizon line is always going to cut mid-chest to characters. Nearly universally, we will start off with every bit of staging by placing our character with a horizon line mid-chest. And then all the staging and perspective is going to flow from this start. Why is this done? Well, television cameras, as you can see here, have a viewing spot for the operator that is at eye level. However, the camera itself shoots at mid-chest level. And here's the camera. And the reason for that simply is because when everything started, film or videotape would have to be here, passing through the camera. And so if the person were also looking through, light would get in and destroy the film. So there is a system of mirrors that allow the film to be processed at this level while the camera operator is looking at this level. Because this is how all television started, we've gotten so used to this being the way that we look at television. We now still operate this way, and in animation, where we can do anything, if we want to emulate primetime sitcoms from the live action, we're going to do setups in the same way. Now, about that horizon line, the way to place characters around a room on a horizon line, there can be multiple vanishing points depending on which way an object is facing, but there's always going to be only one horizon line. This is very important. Whenever a horizon line cuts a character, and it can be mid-chest or we can move it around, say here at the knees, if you place the character anywhere in the setup, as long as that character is always knees, you will have a character in proper perspective. So wherever you set your perspective, wherever you set your horizon line, all characters of the same size are going to cut that horizon line at the same place. It's an easy way to place characters anywhere you like, but make sure that they're always in proper perspective.